Have you ever felt that something was right, long before you could explain why? Not a dramatic feeling, not an emotional rush, just a quiet, steady knowing that arrived before words, before logic, before your mind even had time to catch up. Most of us have experienced this at least once in our lives. And when it happens, it often surprises us, not because it's strange, but because it feels strangely familiar. Before the mind begins to analyze, compare, and doubt, the heart already knows, not in a sentimental way, not as a mood or a fleeting emotion, but as a deeper kind of intelligence, one that doesn't argue, doesn't rush, and doesn't need to convince you of anything. We've been taught to trust the mind, to respect logic, to believe that clarity must come from thinking harder, weighing options, and collecting more information. And while the mind is a powerful tool, it was never meant to lead the whole orchestra of your life on its own. It was meant to respond, not dominate, because there is another center of intelligence within you, quiet, steady, and remarkably precise. And that center lives in the heart. Modern science is only just beginning to catch up to what ancient wisdom has been pointing to for thousands of years. Researchers now tell us that the heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in the human body, far stronger than the brain's. This field doesn't stop at your skin. It extends outward, interacting with the world around you, subtly shaping how you experience reality. But long before laboratories could measure it, spiritual traditions spoke of this same truth in different language. They called it the wisdom of the heart, the seat of the soul, the place where life speaks directly, without translation. Two languages, one truth. And the most important part is this intelligence of the heart doesn't shout, it doesn't force, it doesn't compete with the mind. It simply knows and waits patiently for you to notice. Think about how often clarity has arrived, not when you were pushing, but when you finally softened, not when you were trying to control every outcome, but when you let your guard down just enough to breathe. It's almost as if life itself relaxes when you do. The heart operates in a very different rhythm from the mind. The mind is always scanning the past, rehearsing the future, trying to protect you from imagined dangers. The heart, on the other hand, lives almost entirely in the present moment. It doesn't rush ahead. It doesn't replay old stories. It responds to what is real now. That's why its guidance often feels calm, even when it's firm. You may have noticed this in moments when logic told you one thing, but something deeper pulled you in another direction. A job that looked perfect on paper but felt heavy the moment you imagined saying yes. A relationship that made no sense logically, yet felt like home. A choice that frightened the mind but brought peace to the chest. These moments are not accidents. They are not irrational impulses. They are signals from a deeper layer of intelligence that sees more than the mind can calculate. The heart doesn't work through fear or urgency. It works through resonance. When something aligns with you, the body relaxes, the breath deepens, the chest softens. When something is out of alignment, even if it looks good externally, there is contraction, a subtle tightening, a quiet resistance, a sense of strain. Most people ignore these signals, not because they are unavailable, but because we were never taught to trust them. We were taught to override the heart, to call it too emotional, to believe that wisdom must always be cold, detached, and rational. And so, over time, many people lose touch with this inner compass, not because it disappears, but because the noise of the mind becomes too loud. Yet the heart never stops communicating. In fact, science now shows that the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Signals that influence perception, emotional processing, and decision-making. In other words, many of your thoughts are already responding to what the heart has initiated long before you become conscious of it. This changes everything. It means you are not broken for feeling before thinking. You are not weak for sensing what cannot yet be explained. You are not confused. You are simply listening to a part of yourself that speaks more softly. And here is where something beautiful happens. When you begin to listen to the heart, not dramatically, not obsessively, But gently, your entire relationship with life starts to shift. Decisions become less exhausting. You stop needing to force clarity. You stop demanding certainty before taking the next step. Life becomes less about control and more about cooperation. The heart doesn't ask you to abandon reason. It asks you to place reason in its proper role. The mind becomes a skilled navigator, but the heart becomes the compass. Without the compass, you can drive very fast and still end up lost. This is why so many people feel tired, even when they are doing everything right. They are living from the neck up, trying to solve a life that can only be felt. The heart is not interested in proving anything. It is interested in harmony. And harmony doesn't come from effort. It comes from coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and body are no longer pulling in different directions. When the inner struggle softens, reality often follows, like a river that no longer strains to flow uphill, but finally relaxes into its natural direction. This is not mystical in the sense of being unrealistic. It is deeply practical. People who live with greater heart coherence tend to experience clearer intuition, more stable emotions, and a stronger sense of connection to themselves, to others, and to life itself. Not because they try harder, but because they resist less. The heart's intelligence is not something you need to develop. It is something you need to remember. Children live from this place naturally. They know when something feels right. They know when something feels off. They don't overthink their joy or negotiate with their curiosity. We unlearn this by necessity, by conditioning, by fear, by the need to survive in complex systems. But survival is not the same as living. And eventually, the heart begins to call us back. Not loudly, not urgently, but persistently. This video is not here to convince you of anything. There is nothing you need to believe, nothing you need to adopt as a new idea. This is simply an invitation, a quiet one, to notice what has always been there. To notice how your chest responds when something is true. To notice how tension dissolves when you stop forcing answers. To notice that beneath the noise of the mind, there is a steady intelligence that has been guiding you all along. As you continue watching, allow yourself to listen differently, not with effort, not with expectation, just with presence. Because when the heart softens, life doesn't need to fight you anymore. It simply meets you where you are and flows. 1. The heart is not just a pump, it is an energy center. For a long time, we were taught to see the heart as a mechanical thing, a pump, a muscle that contracts and relaxes, pushing blood through tubes so the body can keep going. Useful, essential, but not particularly mysterious. That story was comforting because it made the body feel predictable and controllable, but it was never the whole story. And something deep inside us has always known that. Modern science now tells us something quietly astonishing. The heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in the human body, many times more powerful than the field produced by the brain. This is not poetry. This is measurement. Sensors placed several feet away from the body can still detect the heart's electromagnetic activity, long after the brain's signals fade into silence. In other words, the heart is not only active inside your chest, it is broadcasting, constantly. And this changes how we understand what it means to be alive. Because if the heart were only a pump, its influence would end at the edge of your bloodstream. But if the heart is an electromagnetic center, then its influence extends beyond skin, beyond bone, beyond what you can see. It means that you are not a closed system walking through the world, sealed off from everything else. You are an open field, in constant conversation with your environment. You are not just living in a body, you are living inside a living energy field. This may sound abstract at first, but you already experience it every day. Even if you've never had language for it, you feel it when someone walks into a room and the atmosphere shifts before they say a word. You feel it when you stand near someone who is calm, grounded, and present, and your own body begins to soften without effort. You feel it when tension, anger, or fear radiates from another person, and your chest tightens instinctively, even if nothing bad is happening on the surface. These reactions are not imagination. They are not emotional weakness. They are the nervous system responding to electromagnetic information. Long before the mind has time to analyze the situation, the heart reads the world faster than thought. What makes this even more profound is that the heart's field is not chaotic. It carries information, patterns, rhythms. When the heart is stressed, hurried, or guarded, the field becomes irregular. When the heart is calm, appreciative, or open, the field becomes coherent and ordered. This coherence does not stay trapped inside you. It influences how the brain functions, how the body regulates itself, and how you relate to the people and circumstances around you. This is why inner states matter more than we were ever taught. Many people try to change their lives by adjusting behavior alone. They think if they say the right words, take the right actions, or think the right thoughts, things will finally fall into place. But without a shift at the level of the heart, these changes rarely last. They require constant effort, constant correction, constant self-control. Eventually, exhaustion sets in. The heart does not work through force. It works through alignment. When the heart is coherent, the body organizes itself more efficiently. Breathing becomes deeper without being controlled. Muscles release tension without being told to relax. The mind becomes clearer, not because you are thinking better thoughts, but because it is no longer drowning in conflicting signals from the body. Life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a flow. This is not a mystical claim. It is a physiological one with emotional consequences. The heart, in many ways, acts like a tuning fork. It sets the tone for the entire system. When its rhythm is fragmented, everything else compensates. When its rhythm is steady, everything else follows. This is why people who live in constant urgency often feel scattered, disconnected, and overwhelmed even when nothing is technically wrong. Their hearts are running ahead of their bodies, trying to keep up with a world they feel they must outrun. And this is also why moments of genuine peace can feel almost shocking. When the heart finally slows, when it stops bracing for impact, the body remembers what safety feels like, not as an idea, but as a physical reality. Think about how rare it is for most adults to truly rest. Not sleep, but rest. A state where nothing needs to be fixed, improved, or defended. A state where the chest feels open rather than guarded. When this happens, even briefly, people often describe it as coming home to themselves. That sense of home is not psychological nostalgia. It is energetic familiarity. The heart recognizes coherence the way a compass recognizes north. It doesn't debate. It doesn't justify. It simply responds. And here is where ancient wisdom and modern science quietly meet. Long before electromagnetic fields could be measured, spiritual traditions spoke of the heart as the seat of intelligence, awareness, and connection. They did not mean emotion in the modern sense. They meant something deeper, a place where life organizes itself without effort, where knowing arises without thinking. Different cultures use different words, but they were pointing to the same experience. A center that perceives truth directly, without needing to break it into parts. What we are now discovering is not new. It is remembered. When you understand the heart as an energy center rather than a mechanical device, your relationship with yourself begins to change. You stop treating your body like a machine that needs to be optimized and start listening to it as a living system that communicates constantly. Fatigue becomes information. Tension becomes a message. Calm becomes guidance. You begin to notice that forcing yourself through life often comes at a cost. You can feel in your chest long before you see it in your circumstances. And slowly, something shifts. You stop trying to control every outcome. You stop demanding certainty before taking the next step. You start paying attention to resonance rather than logic alone. This does not make you irrational. It makes you integrated. The mind is brilliant at analysis, planning, and problem solving. But it was never designed to run the whole show in isolation. Without the heart's guidance, the mind becomes anxious, rigid, and defensive. With the heart involved, the mind becomes a powerful ally rather than a tyrant. This is why so many people experience clarity not when they think harder, but when they finally let go, when they stop gripping the wheel and allow the deeper intelligence of the body to participate in the journey. The heart does not need instructions. It needs permission. And permission is given through softness, not strain. When the heart softens, its field becomes more coherent. When its field becomes coherent, the body relaxes. When the body relaxes, perception changes. And when perception changes, life responds differently, not because the world has magically transformed, but because you are no longer meeting it with resistance, like a river that stops fighting its own current. Everything downstream begins to flow more easily. You are not meant to push your way through existence using willpower alone. You are meant to move with it, guided by a center of intelligence that has been quietly working on your behalf since the moment you were born. The heart has always known how to do this. It is not waiting for improvement. It is waiting for trust. And as you begin to see the heart, not as a fragile emotional organ, but as a powerful energetic center, something settles inside you. You realize that you were never as disconnected as you thought. You were never as lost as you feared. You were simply listening to the wrong voice. The heart has been speaking the whole time. 2. The heart communicates with the brain more than the brain communicates with the heart. For most of our lives, we were taught a simple hierarchy. The brain is in charge. The heart follows. Thoughts lead. Emotions react. Reason decides. And feeling adapts. It sounds clean and logical, and on the surface, it makes sense. But like many neat stories we were given, it turns out to be incomplete. Modern research has quietly revealed something that overturns this old assumption without drama or spectacle. At every moment, millions of signals are traveling from the heart to the brain, not the other way around. From the heart upward, these signals influence how the brain processes information, how it regulates emotion, how it perceives safety and threat, and how it prepares the body to act. The heart is not waiting for instructions. It is sending them. This doesn't mean the brain is unimportant. It means the conversation is different from what we were told. The brain is often responding to information it has already received from the heart, shaping it into thoughts, explanations, and stories that feel reasonable and familiar. By the time you decide something consciously, much of the direction has already been set at a deeper level. The mind, brilliant as it is, often arrives after the fact to make sense of what the heart has already initiated. You can feel this if you look honestly at your own life. Think of the decisions that truly shaped you, the ones that changed the course of your relationships, your work, your sense of self. How many of them came from careful calculation alone? And how many came from a feeling you couldn't fully explain at the time? A pull, a resistance, a quiet certainty that didn't argue, but didn't go away either. Later, you found reasons. You built a narrative that sounded logical enough to justify the choice. But if you're truthful, the knowing came first. The explanation came later. This is not a flaw in human thinking. It is how the system is designed. The heart communicates in patterns and rhythms, not words. It sends information to the brain about coherence and incoherence, about alignment and misalignment, about safety and readiness. The brain translates these signals into concepts it can work with. When the signals are coherent, the brain functions more efficiently. When the signals are chaotic, the brain struggles, overthinks, and often moves into fear-based reasoning. This is why trying to think your way out of emotional overwhelm so often fails. The mind is working with distorted input. It is like trying to navigate a city using a map that keeps changing shape. No amount of intellectual effort can compensate for a lack of inner coherence. And here is where compassion becomes essential. Many people label themselves as irrational, emotional, or indecisive because they feel pulled in directions they cannot immediately justify. They learn to distrust themselves. They silence the heart and elevate the mind, believing that maturity means suppressing what cannot be neatly explained. Over time, this creates a subtle inner split. A life lived from the neck up, disconnected from the body's deeper intelligence. But the problem was never that you were unreasonable. The problem was that you were trained not to trust the part of you that perceives first. The heart does not compete with logic. It precedes it. It offers raw data about reality as it is being experienced, not as it is being analyzed. When this data is ignored, the mind compensates by working harder, creating more stories, more strategies, more control. Exhaustion often follows. This is why so many people feel mentally tired, even when they are not physically overworked. The brain is trying to solve problems that do not originate at the level of thought. When you begin to understand that the heart is informing the brain continuously, something softens in how you relate to yourself. You stop criticizing your instincts. You stop demanding that every inner signal come with a spreadsheet of reasons attached. You begin to see intuition not as a mystical gift reserved for a few, but as a biological function that has always been operating in you. The awakening here is gentle but profound. You realize that many of your so-called mistakes were not failures of judgment, but moments where you ignored the heart and followed the mind's fear instead. You also realize that many of your most aligned choices felt risky, not because they were wrong, but because the mind had not yet caught up with the heart's clarity. This understanding does not make life simpler in a superficial way. It makes it truer. When the heart leads and the brain supports, decision-making becomes less dramatic. There is less internal debate, less second-guessing, less need to seek external validation. You may still feel uncertainty, but it no longer paralyzes you. It becomes part of the process rather than an obstacle. The heart does not demand certainty. It requires sincerity. This is especially important as people grow older. With experience comes pattern recognition. The heart becomes increasingly refined at sensing what aligns and what drains. Yet many people override this wisdom, telling themselves they are being too sensitive or too cautious, when in fact they are becoming more accurate. A seasoned heart is not fragile. It is precise. When you allow the heart to communicate freely with the brain, the nervous system begins to settle. The body no longer has to shout through anxiety or tension to be heard. Signals become clearer. Reactions become calmer. The mind stops spinning stories about every sensation and starts listening instead. This is not about abandoning reason. It is about restoring balance. The mind is extraordinary at navigating complexity once it is grounded in coherent input from the heart. Without that grounding, it becomes defensive and controlling. With it, it becomes creative, flexible, and discerning. This is why presence feels so different from analysis. Presence allows the heart to lead the conversation. Analysis tries to replace it. And here is the simple truth that often brings relief. You were never broken for feeling before thinking. You were never weak for sensing what others could not articulate. You were never lost, you were simply listening to a quieter channel. When you begin to trust the heart's signals again, you don't become reckless. You become anchored. You don't lose clarity. You gain it. You stop reacting to life as a series of problems to be solved and start engaging with it as a relationship that responds to coherence, like two instruments finally tuning to the same key. The heart and brain begin to work together rather than against each other. This cooperation does not require effort. It requires permission. Permission to pause when something feels wrong, even if it looks right on paper. Permission to move toward what feels alive, even if the path is unfamiliar. Permission to stop calling yourself illogical when you are simply responding to information that has not yet been translated into words. The heart has been speaking to the brain your entire life. The question was never whether the communication existed. The question was whether you were willing to listen. And as you begin to listen again, not with urgency but with respect, something fundamental changes. You stop fighting yourself. You stop forcing alignment through willpower. You start moving with a deeper current that has always known where you were meant to go, not because it thinks faster, but because it knows sooner. 3. The heart has its own intelligence. It does not think. Yet it knows with clarity. There is a kind of knowing that does not arrive as a sentence in your mind. It does not come with arguments, evidence, or a list of pros and cons. It arrives quietly, often when you are not trying to decide anything at all. And because it does not behave the way thinking behaves, many people overlook it, dismiss it, or talk themselves out of it. Yet this form of knowing is often the most accurate guidance we ever receive. The intelligence of the heart does not speak in words. It does not debate. It does not negotiate with fear or try to persuade you that it is right. It simply presents itself, gently but firmly, as an inner state, a feeling of ease, a subtle tightening, a calm clarity, or sometimes a very quiet sense that something is not aligned, even when everything looks acceptable on the surface. This is where many people become confused. They expect wisdom to sound like thinking. They expect truth to announce itself loudly. When the heart offers its guidance without explanation, the mind steps in and says, "That's not enough. Where's the reason? Where's the proof?" And because the heart refuses to argue, it is often the one that gets ignored. But the heart was never designed to convince you. It was designed to orient you. The heart's intelligence shows up as sensation rather than narration. You feel it as a sense of peace that settles in your chest when you imagine one path, and a subtle contraction when you imagine another. You feel it as a quiet expansion when something resonates, or as a heaviness when something asks you to move against your own truth. These sensations are not dramatic. They are refined, and because they are refined, they require presence to be noticed. This is why the heart is often drowned out by a busy mind. The mind lives in time. It constantly revisits the past, replaying what went wrong, what should have been said, what might have been different. It also rushes into the future, projecting outcomes, preparing defenses, rehearsing failures that have not yet happened. The mind believes this activity keeps you safe. In some ways, it once did. But it also pulls your attention away from the only place where the heart can be felt. The heart lives almost entirely in the present moment. Eckhart Tolle spoke about this with remarkable clarity when he pointed out that most suffering arises not from what is happening now, but from the mind's relationship to time. The heart does not carry psychological time the way the mind does. It responds to what is real, here and now. This is why its guidance feels grounded rather than anxious. Even when it signals that something is wrong, it does so without panic. The heart does not catastrophize. It does not dramatize. It simply registers alignment or misalignment. When you begin to notice this, you may realize that the heart has been guiding you all along, but you learned to override it early in life. Many of us were taught, directly or indirectly, that trusting our inner sense was dangerous or irresponsible. We were praised for being reasonable and corrected for being too sensitive. Over time, we learned to privilege explanation over experience, logic over sensation. The cost of this training is subtle but profound. You may become very good at explaining your choices, yet feel strangely disconnected from them. You may make decisions that look correct but leave you drained. You may succeed externally while feeling internally misaligned, unable to articulate why something feels off. This is not a personal failure. It is a cultural conditioning. The heart's intelligence cannot be accessed through effort. It becomes clearer as you relax your grip on thinking. This is why clarity often comes in moments of stillness while walking, breathing quietly, or simply sitting without trying to solve anything. When the mind loosens its hold, the heart has space to be felt. This does not mean the heart is emotional in the way people often assume. Emotional reactivity belongs to an overstimulated nervous system, not to the heart's deeper intelligence. The heart's signals are calm even when they are firm. They do not demand immediate action. They simply inform. A gentle contraction does not mean danger. It means pause. A sense of openness does not mean certainty. It means alignment. The problem is not that the heart is unclear. The problem is that the mind expects clarity to look like certainty. The heart does not offer certainty. It offers direction. And direction is enough when you trust the process of unfolding rather than demanding guarantees. People often ask how to tell the difference between fear and intuition, between heart guidance and emotional reaction. The difference lies in quality. Fear is urgent, loud, and repetitive. It pushes, it insists, it loops. The heart is quiet, steady, and patient. It does not chase your attention, it waits. Fear pulls you away from the present. The heart anchors you in it. This is why the heart's intelligence is inseparable from presence. When you are fully here, without rehearsing or resisting, the heart's signals become obvious. You don't have to interpret them. You recognize them the way you recognize the feeling of balance in your body. There is no argument. There is simply knowing. This knowing does not make you superior or special. It makes you human. Every living system operates this way. Animals do not debate whether to move toward safety. Plants orient toward light without thinking. The human heart carries this same intelligence, layered beneath our complex cognitive abilities. We did not lose it. We learned to ignore it. And yet, even ignored, it continues to function. It shows up as fatigue when you stay in situations that drain you. It shows up as relief when you finally tell the truth. It shows up as a quiet sadness when you betray your own values, even for good reasons. These are not punishments. They are communications. The heart is not interested in judging you. It is interested in bringing you back into coherence with yourself. When you begin to trust this intelligence, something important happens. You stop needing to explain yourself constantly. You stop outsourcing your authority to other people's opinions. You stop demanding that every choice be defensible in advance. You begin to live from an inner alignment that does not require approval. This does not make life perfect. It makes it honest. You may still make mistakes. You may still feel uncertainty, but the uncertainty feels alive rather than paralyzing. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are listening. The heart does not promise comfort. It promises truth without cruelty. As you allow the heart to guide more of your attention, the mind gradually relaxes. It no longer has to run ahead, predicting every outcome. It can do what it does best: analyze, plan, and execute while being informed by a deeper sense of rightness. This is integration, not opposition. The heart and mind were never meant to be enemies. They were meant to be partners. The heart provides orientation. The mind provides articulation. When they work together, life feels less like a series of problems to be solved and more like a movement to be participated in. And perhaps the most healing realization of all is this: you were never broken for not being able to explain what you felt. You were never weak for sensing what could not yet be named. You were simply listening to a form of intelligence that does not need words to be true. The heart knows because it is here. The mind struggles because it is elsewhere. When you return to the present moment, again and again, without forcing or effort, the heart's intelligence becomes unmistakable. It does not rush you. It does not demand perfection. It invites you to move in harmony with what is real now. And in that harmony, life begins to feel less heavy, less conflicted, less divided. Not because the world has changed, but because you are finally listening to the part of you that never left the present in the first place. 4. When the heart becomes rigid, the world feels rigid too. There is a pattern many of us notice only after years of living. Usually after enough disappointment has piled up to force us to slow down. When the heart is tense, guarded, or bracing for impact, life seems to push back harder. Conversations feel sharper. Situations feel heavier. Even small inconveniences feel personal. It can seem as if the world has suddenly become unkind, demanding, or resistant. But often, what has changed first is not the world. It is the inner posture we are meeting it with. When you are defensive, you hear threat where there may be none. When you are suspicious, you interpret ambiguity as danger. When you are anxious, neutral events feel loaded with meaning. This is not a moral failure or a weakness of character. It is a natural consequence of a heart that has learned to protect itself by tightening. Most people do not realize how much effort it takes to live this way. A guarded heart is constantly monitoring. It is scanning for signs of rejection, betrayal, or loss. It holds the body in a low-grade state of tension, even when nothing is immediately wrong. Over time, This state becomes familiar. It feels normal. And because it feels normal, it becomes invisible. Yet life responds to this posture with remarkable consistency. When the heart is braced, interactions become transactional rather than relational. You speak from a place of caution rather than openness. You listen in order to defend rather than to understand. People sense this, even if they cannot name it. They respond with their own defenses, their own distance, their own rigidity. A feedback loop is formed, not by intention, but by resonance. From a quantum perspective, this is not mysterious. The heart's electromagnetic field does not simply exist in isolation. It interacts continuously with other fields, other bodies, other systems. When your field is coherent and open, interaction tends to be smoother. When it is fragmented and contracted, interaction tends to involve friction. This does not mean you cause every difficult experience by having the wrong energy. That kind of thinking quickly turns into blame. It means something more subtle and more compassionate. It means that the state you inhabit shapes how reality meets you, moment by moment. The heart is like water. When water flows freely, it adapts to whatever it encounters. It moves around obstacles without losing its nature. But when water freezes, it becomes rigid. Everything that collides with it feels sharp. Even gentle contact can cause pain. The water did not become cruel. It became hard. A hardened heart does not mean a bad heart. It means a heart that has been hurt. Many people harden without realizing it. Loss, betrayal, chronic stress, disappointment, and unresolved grief all contribute to this freezing. At first, the tightening feels protective. It reduces vulnerability. It creates the illusion of control. But over time, it also reduces sensitivity, joy, and connection. Life begins to feel like something to endure rather than something to participate in. And the tragedy is that the very defenses meant to keep us safe often become the source of our ongoing discomfort. A rigid heart cannot feel subtle guidance. It cannot sense nuance. It reacts quickly and strongly, because it is already tense. This is why people in prolonged states of stress often feel overwhelmed by minor challenges. The system is already maxed out. There is no room for flexibility. From the outside, this can look like irritability, withdrawal, or emotional numbness. On the inside, it often feels like exhaustion, a deep tiredness that sleep does not fix. The world, meeting this rigidity, does not soften. It mirrors. Opportunities feel blocked. Relationships feel strained. Even time itself feels compressed. As if there is never enough of it. The harder you try to manage everything, the more resistant everything seems to become. This leads many people to push even harder, tightening further, believing effort will eventually break through the resistance. But rigidity cannot be solved with more force. This is where a gentler understanding begins to emerge. The heart's electromagnetic field does not just influence others. It influences how your own nervous system interprets reality. When the field is incoherent, the body remains in survival mode. In survival mode, the brain prioritizes threat detection over creativity, control over curiosity, certainty over openness. Life narrows. When the heart softens, even slightly, something profound happens. The nervous system begins to shift out of defense. Breathing deepens, muscles release, perception widens. The same external world is still there, but it is experienced differently. This is not positive thinking. It is physiological and energetic regulation. A softened heart does not mean you stop having boundaries. It means your boundaries are no longer built from fear. They are built from clarity. You no longer need to anticipate harm everywhere because you trust your capacity to respond when something truly requires attention. This trust is what allows flexibility to return. When flexibility returns, the world seems to cooperate more. Not because it has changed its rules, but because you are no longer fighting it at every point of contact. Conversations flow more naturally. Challenges feel more workable. Even setbacks feel less personal. less defining. The frozen water begins to melt, and melting does not happen through effort. It happens through warmth, through presence, through allowing yourself to feel without immediately bracing against what arises. This is often uncomfortable at first. Vulnerability can feel risky to a heart that has learned to survive by tightening. But there is a difference between vulnerability and exposure. Vulnerability is openness with awareness. Exposure is openness without support. A softened heart still knows when to pause, when to step back, when to protect itself. It simply does so without freezing. This is where healing actually takes place. You may notice that when you soften internally, life does not become perfect. Difficult things still happen. People still disappoint. Plans still change. But the texture of experience shifts. You meet challenges with responsiveness rather than reactivity. You feel less bruised by contact with the world. Like water returning to flow, you regain adaptability. The quantum insight here is not about controlling reality. It is about participating in it more skillfully. When your heart field is rigid, interaction becomes collision. When it is fluid, interaction becomes movement. This is why so many spiritual traditions emphasize softening rather than striving. Why surrender is described not as giving up, but as giving in to a deeper intelligence. When you stop bracing against life, life no longer has to push as hard to get your attention. A softened heart does not invite harm. It invites coherence. And coherence changes how everything is processed. Pain becomes information rather than punishment. Resistance becomes a signal rather than an enemy. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start sensing, "What is this asking of me?" This shift alone reduces suffering. You begin to realize that much of what felt harsh was amplified by inner tension, that many conflicts were escalated by defensiveness rather than necessity. This realization does not lead to regret. It leads to compassion for yourself and for others who are also navigating life with frozen hearts. Often without knowing it, the world feels rigid to those who are rigid within, not as a judgment, as a mirror. And mirrors are not there to blame. They are there to reflect. As the heart gradually softens, the reflection changes, not instantly, not magically, but steadily. The sharp edges lose some of their sting. The sense of constant struggle eases. Life becomes less of a battlefield and more of a terrain, sometimes rough, sometimes gentle, but navigable. This is not about becoming passive. It is about becoming permeable. Permeable hearts allow experience to pass through without shattering. They bend without breaking. They respond without freezing. And in that flexibility, there is a quiet strength that no amount of rigidity can produce. The water flows again. And when it does, the world no longer feels like something you have to survive. It feels like something you can finally move within. 5. When the heart softens, reality softens with it. There comes a moment in many lives when pushing no longer works. You have tried effort, discipline, control, and self-improvement. You have done the right things. You have thought carefully, planned responsibly, and held yourself together when it felt like everything inside wanted to collapse. And still, something feels tight. Life feels heavy, as if every step forward requires force. This is usually the moment when softening begins to make sense, not because you want to give up, but because you are tired of fighting a world that seems to resist you at every turn. Softening, in the way we are speaking of here, is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not lowering your standards or tolerating what harms you. Softening is the release of unnecessary control. It is the moment you stop gripping life as if it might fall apart the second you loosen your hands. A softened heart is not defenseless. It is unarmored. And there is a difference. Armor is heavy. It slows you down. It keeps you safe from pain. But it also keeps you from feeling. When you have worn it long enough, you forget what ease feels like. You forget that movement can be fluid. You forget that not everything requires resistance. When the heart softens, the body notices first. The shoulders drop without instruction. The breath deepens without effort. The jaw unclenches. There is a subtle sense of space where tension used to live. Nothing dramatic happens. no fireworks. Just a quiet return to something more natural. This is the beginning of healing. Abraham Hicks often speaks about allowance, about the difference between forcing and permitting. When you allow, you stop arguing with what is. You stop insisting that life conform to your timeline, your expectations, your fear-based plans. You don't stop caring. You stop constricting. Allowance is not resignation. It is alignment. When you allow, energy begins to move differently. What was stuck begins to flow. What felt blocked begins to rearrange itself. Not because you demanded change, but because resistance has softened enough for movement to occur. This is something you can observe clearly in everyday life. Think about relationships. How often have connections improved not when you tried harder, explained more, or fixed everything, but when you finally relaxed, when you stopped monitoring every word, when you stopped bracing for disappointment, when you allowed people to show you who they were without trying to manage the outcome. Often, that is when warmth returns. That is when understanding appears, or clarity arrives that tells you, gently but firmly, whether something is meant to continue or to end. The same is true for opportunities. Many people chase opportunities with tension in their chest, afraid that if they do not push, nothing will happen. Yet opportunities often appear when you are least forceful, when you are engaged, present, and open rather than strained. When you are doing what feels aligned rather than what feels urgent. This is not coincidence. It is coherence. When the heart softens, its electromagnetic field becomes more ordered, more harmonious. This coherence influences perception, behavior, and interaction. You communicate more clearly. You listen more fully. You respond rather than react. Others feel this. Even if they cannot articulate why being around you feels easier, life responds to ease with ease. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means they meet a different inner climate. A softened heart does not collapse under difficulty. It adapts. It bends. It finds pathways where a rigid heart only sees walls. This is why softness is strength. A rigid structure breaks under pressure. A flexible one distributes force. The heart, when softened, becomes resilient rather than brittle. Pain still registers, but it does not define you. Setbacks still occur, but they do not harden you further. Instead of freezing, you stay responsive. This responsiveness is what allows synchronicity to emerge. Those moments when things line up without strain, when the right conversation happens at the right time, when help arrives unexpectedly, when a door opens just as you were about to force another one. These moments are not rewards for good behavior. They are natural outcomes of reduced resistance. When you are no longer gripping the steering wheel, you can feel the road. Many people fear softening because they associate it with losing control. But control is often an illusion that costs more than it gives. True stability does not come from managing every variable. It comes from trusting your capacity to respond intelligently as life unfolds. The heart understands this instinctively. When you soften, you stop needing life to behave in a particular way for you to be okay. This does not mean you stop having preferences. It means your sense of well-being is no longer hostage to outcomes. You are rooted in something deeper than circumstance. This rootedness is what allows reality to soften in response. Conflicts de-escalate more easily. Misunderstandings resolve with less drama. Even when things do not go your way, they do not feel like personal failures. They feel like information, feedback, redirection. The internal war ends. And when the war ends, energy previously spent on defense becomes available for creativity, connection, and clarity. You begin to notice beauty again. Small pleasures, subtle joys, the ordinary moments that were always there but impossible to feel when your heart was clenched. This is often when people say, life feels lighter, even though nothing externally has changed much. That lightness is not denial. It is relief. Relief from the belief that everything depends on effort alone. Relief from the pressure to perform your worthiness. Relief from the constant vigilance that once felt necessary for survival. A softened heart trusts timing. It understands that forcing a seed to grow does not help it. It provides the right conditions and allows life to do what it does best. This does not make you passive. It makes you cooperative. Cooperation with life is not submission. It is intelligence in motion. You still take action, but action arises from alignment rather than fear. You still make decisions, but they come from clarity rather than urgency. You still care deeply, but your caring is no longer laced with tension. And the world feels this shift. People respond differently. Situations unfold with less friction. Even challenges seem to arrive with built-in solutions. Because you are no longer too contracted to see them. Reality softens because you have softened your relationship to it. This is the quiet miracle that rarely gets advertised because it does not come with spectacle. It comes with ease, with simplicity, with a sense that you are no longer swimming against the current of your own life. You begin to realize that much of what you were seeking was already available, waiting for you to stop tightening around it. The heart does not ask you to try harder. It asks you to trust deeper. When you allow, energy flows. When energy flows, life organizes itself more gracefully. When life organizes itself more gracefully, you remember that existence was never meant to feel like constant resistance. Like water released from ice, movement returns. Like breath after holding it too long, relief arrives. And in that relief, you discover something quietly profound. You were never meant to harden yourself to survive life. You were meant to soften enough to live it. 6. The state of the heart determines the harmony of the entire body. There is a quiet truth that many people only begin to understand after years of trying to fix themselves. The body does not need constant correction. It needs coherence. And coherence does not begin in the muscles, the organs, or even the thoughts. It begins in the heart. Science now speaks openly about what the body has always known. When the rhythm of the heart becomes harmonious, the nervous system naturally shifts into balance. Stress responses soften. Hormones regulate themselves more efficiently. Digestion improves. Immunity strengthens. The body begins to do what it was designed to do, without being forced or managed. This process does not require effort. It requires alignment. The heart's rhythm acts like a conductor guiding an orchestra. When the rhythm is erratic, every section struggles to keep up. When the rhythm is steady and coherent, each part finds its place naturally. The body listens to this rhythm constantly, adjusting thousands of processes every second based on the signals it receives. You may have noticed this without knowing why. When you feel safe, your breathing slows without instruction. When you feel at ease, your shoulders relax without command. When you feel appreciated or deeply present, your body feels lighter, warmer, more alive. These are not emotional luxuries. They are biological responses to coherence in the heart. The heart does not just pump blood. It sets the tone for regulation. When the heart is rushed, guarded, or overwhelmed, the nervous system stays on high alert. The body remains prepared for danger even when none is present. Over time, this constant readiness exhausts the system. Fatigue becomes chronic. Pain lingers. Healing slows. People often assume something is broken, when in truth, the body is simply responding faithfully to the signals it is receiving. The body believes the heart. This is where a deeper, more compassionate understanding begins to emerge. The body is not working against you. It is listening to you. Or more accurately, it is listening to the state of your heart. From a spiritual perspective, this has always been understood intuitively. Many traditions speak of the heart as the meeting point between the physical and the subtle, the place where consciousness organizes itself into form. The body, in this view, is not a machine to be repaired, but a living expression of inner harmony or disharmony. When the heart is at war with itself, the body reflects that conflict. When the heart is at peace, the body follows. This does not mean illness is a failure of awareness or a lack of positivity. That kind of thinking only adds pressure and blame. It means something far gentler. It means the body responds to long-term patterns of tension and relaxation, of trust and fear, of coherence and fragmentation. It responds faithfully, without judgment. Many people approach healing as a project. They try to fix symptoms, optimize routines, control inputs. While these approaches can be helpful, they often miss the foundation without heart coherence. Improvements are fragile. They require constant vigilance. The moment attention slips, the old patterns return. The heart does not need to be managed. It needs to be allowed. When the heart settles into a natural rhythm, the nervous system recognizes safety. In that recognition, repair begins. Cells regenerate more efficiently. Systems communicate more clearly. The body shifts from survival mode into maintenance and renewal. This is why rest feels different when it comes from peace rather than exhaustion. Sleep deepens. Recovery accelerates. You wake up feeling restored rather than merely functional. The body responds not to instructions, but to atmosphere. If the inner atmosphere is tense, the body stays vigilant. If the inner atmosphere is calm, the body releases effort. This is why practices that focus on heart coherence, gentle breathing, appreciation, presence often have effects far beyond relaxation. They restore communication between systems that have been out of sync. This restoration feels like coming back into your body. Many people live slightly disconnected from their physical experience. They inhabit the mind, while the body carries unspoken tension. When heart coherence returns, sensation returns too. You become aware of subtle signals again. Hunger, fatigue, emotion, and intuition all regain clarity. You stop overriding yourself. This is not regression. It is reintegration. The heart's natural rhythm is not forced positivity. It does not demand constant calm or happiness. It allows the full range of human experience to move through without becoming stuck. Sadness can pass. Anger can inform. Fear can signal without dominating. The body remains flexible because the heart remains open. This flexibility is health. When people hear that the heart influences the entire body, they sometimes feel pressure to maintain the right state. But the heart does not ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. Suppressed emotions disrupt coherence more than expressed ones. Pretending to be fine creates more tension than acknowledging what is present. The heart's rhythm stabilizes when you stop resisting your own experience. This is where healing becomes simpler than we were led to believe. You do not need to fix yourself. You do not need to chase an ideal version of wellness. You need to let the heart return to its natural rhythm, which happens when you stop forcing yourself to be anything other than present. The body knows how to adjust when it is given the right conditions. Those conditions are not extreme discipline or relentless self-improvement. They are safety, permission, and presence. When you allow yourself to rest emotionally, the body rests physically. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, the body processes and releases. This is why moments of genuine connection can feel so healing. A conversation where you feel seen. A walk where your breath and steps fall into rhythm. A quiet moment where nothing needs to be achieved. In these moments, the heart settles, and the body responds immediately. Healing does not arrive as an event. It arrives as a state where the body no longer needs to shout to be heard, where symptoms soften because their message has been received, where tension dissolves because the need for defense has passed. You begin to trust your body again, and your body begins to trust you. This mutual trust creates a feedback loop of regulation. The heart remains coherent. The nervous system remains balanced. The body remains responsive. Life feels more inhabitable. And slowly, a belief loosens its grip. The belief that you are broken. The belief that something is wrong with you. The belief that healing requires struggle. You realize that much of what you were fighting was not an enemy, but a signal, a call for coherence, a request for alignment. The heart does not demand control. It invites rhythm. When you allow the heart to find its natural pace, the body reorganizes itself with remarkable intelligence. You do not have to orchestrate the process. You simply have to stop interrupting it. This is the quiet wisdom the body has been offering all along. You were never meant to repair yourself piece by piece. You were meant to return to harmony. And harmony begins not with effort, but with listening. 7. The heart is the bridge between matter and consciousness. There is a place within you where the physical and the unseen quietly meet. Not in conflict, not in contradiction, but in cooperation. For a long time, we were taught to separate these worlds. Biology belonged to doctors, emotions belonged to psychology, consciousness belonged to philosophy or religion, and somewhere along the way, we learned to fragment ourselves to fit those categories. Yet the body never agreed to that division. It has always lived as a whole. The heart sits at the center of that wholeness. From a scientific perspective, the heart is undeniably biological. It is muscle, rhythm, circulation, electrical signaling. It responds to hormones, oxygen levels, and neural input, but it is also emotional. Its rhythm changes with feeling. It accelerates with fear, steadies with calm, softens with appreciation, tightens with grief, and beyond even that, it is energetic. It generates a field that extends beyond the body, carrying information that influences and is influenced by the environment. Biology, emotion, and energy do not meet in theory. They meet in the heart. This is why the heart cannot be reduced to a single function. It is not only a pump, not only a feeling center, not only an energetic source. It is the point where consciousness begins to take form, where inner states translate into lived experience. Neville Goddard spoke of this in a language that was not scientific, but deeply precise. He reminded us that feeling is the secret, not emotion as reaction, but feeling as an inner state of being, a felt sense of reality that precedes manifestation. According to Neville, what you consistently feel to be true becomes the structure through which life expresses itself. This is not metaphor. It is mechanism. The heart is where feeling becomes embodied. Thoughts may pass through the mind, but feelings settle into the heart. They alter its rhythm. They shape its field. And through that field, they influence how you perceive, interpret, and respond to the world. Emotion, in this sense, is not something that happens to you. It is something that moves through you and organizes experience. This is where many people misunderstand both spirituality and science. They assume that consciousness is abstract, floating somewhere above the body, while matter is dense and separate. In reality, consciousness needs a medium to express itself. The heart is one of its primary translators. When you feel deeply, your body responds. When your body responds, your behavior changes. When behavior changes, outcomes shift. This is not mystical thinking. It is a chain of cause and effect that begins with inner state and ends with external experience. The heart amplifies this process because the heart's electromagnetic field is coherent or incoherent depending on your inner state. It acts as a broadcast system. What you feel consistently is not trapped inside you. It is communicated, subtly, constantly, to your own nervous system, to others, and to the situations you move through. This does not mean the world bends instantly to your emotions. It means that emotions shape the lens through which you engage with the world. And engagement determines experience. A heart rooted in fear interacts with reality differently than a heart rooted in trust. A heart soaked in resentment reads events as hostile. A heart softened by acceptance reads the same events as workable. The external facts may be identical. The experience is not. This is why Neville emphasized feeling rather than visualization alone. Images without feeling have little power. Thoughts without embodiment remain abstract. But when a feeling becomes natural, when it settles into the heart as a lived state, it begins to shape the conditions of life. The heart is the amplifier because it sits at the crossroads. It receives signals from the body. It receives impressions from the mind. It generates an energetic field that informs both. When these signals are aligned, experience flows. When they are fragmented, life feels disjointed and effortful. Many people try to change their lives by manipulating one level alone, thinking differently, acting differently, believing differently, while leaving the heart unchanged. This creates strain. The system is not unified. True change happens when the heart is involved. This does not require dramatic emotion. In fact, subtle feelings are often more powerful than intense ones because they are sustainable. A quiet sense of safety does more for your nervous system than bursts of excitement. A steady feeling of worthiness shapes behavior more reliably than moments of confidence. The heart responds to consistency, not intensity. This is why practices that cultivate appreciation, presence, and sincerity have such a profound effect. They gently retune the heart's rhythm. They align biology, emotion, and energy without force. Over time, this alignment becomes a baseline rather than a peak experience. When that happens, life begins to feel more integrated. You no longer feel like you are dragging your body along behind your intentions. You no longer feel split between what you think and what you feel. Decisions become simpler because the inner signals are clearer. You act with less hesitation because you are not arguing with yourself internally. This is coherence. Coherence is not the absence of difficulty. It is the absence of internal contradiction. You may still face challenges, but you face them as a whole being rather than a divided one. The heart, acting as a bridge, ensures that what you feel, what you think, and what you do are moving in the same direction. This alignment has a noticeable effect on the body. Stress responses soften, recovery improves, sleep deepens, energy stabilizes. These are not secondary benefits. They are direct consequences of the system functioning as it was designed to function. The heart does not want you to transcend the body. It wants you to inhabit it fully. Spirituality that bypasses the body creates imbalance. Science that ignores consciousness creates fragmentation. The heart holds both without conflict. It is grounded and expansive at the same time. When you understand this, the idea of shaping reality through feeling becomes less fantastical and more practical. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start tending to inner states. You stop chasing experiences and start cultivating coherence. Reality responds not to demand, but to alignment. This does not mean you control life. It means you participate in it consciously. You meet events with an inner posture that invites clarity rather than chaos. You recognize that the quality of your experience is deeply linked to the quality of your inner state, and that the heart is where that state takes form. The heart is not passive in this process. It is generative. It takes raw emotion and translates it into embodied experience. It takes abstract intention and gives it rhythm. It takes consciousness and gives it a place to land. When you begin to live from this understanding, something settles. You stop searching for power outside yourself. You stop oscillating between skepticism and blind belief. You stand in a quiet middle ground where science and spirituality are no longer opponents, but collaborators. You realize that the mystery was never meant to be solved. It was meant to be lived. The heart does not ask you to believe anything new. It asks you to feel what is already true. It asks you to notice how different your body feels when you move from fear versus when you move from trust. It asks you to observe how your interactions change when your heart is open rather than guarded. This observation alone is transformative. You see that emotion is not a weakness to overcome, but a force to be understood. You see that consciousness is not separate from matter, but expressed through it. You see that the heart is not a bystander in your life, but a central participant in how life unfolds. And perhaps most importantly, you see that you were never meant to live split between worlds, between logic and intuition, science and spirit, mind and body. The heart is the bridge because it refuses division. It knows that what you feel shapes how you live. It knows that how you live shapes what you experience. And it knows that coherence is not achieved through effort, but through honesty. When you allow the heart to do what it does best, to amplify what is genuinely felt rather than what is forced, you begin to live in a way that feels quietly powerful, not dramatic, not inflated, just real. The bridge has always been there. You do not need to build it. You only need to walk it. 8. Why you feel certain people, places, and paths. There are moments in life that do not ask for analysis. You walk into a room and feel at ease before anyone speaks. You meet someone for the first time and sense a quiet familiarity, as if your body recognizes something your mind has not yet processed. Or the opposite happens. Everything looks right on paper, yet something inside gently resists. There is no clear reason, no dramatic warning, just a subtle sense of not this. Most people have learned to distrust these moments. They tell themselves they are being irrational. They look for explanations that fit logic and social expectation. They override the feeling and move forward anyway. Sometimes it works, often it does not. And later, when clarity arrives through experience rather than intuition, they look back and realize the body knew long before the mind was ready to admit it. This knowing is not mystical. It is relational intelligence. Your heart is constantly sensing the world through a field of information that goes far beyond words and appearances. When you encounter a person, a place, or a potential direction, your heart field interacts with what is in front of you. It reads coherence, tension, familiarity, and dissonance. This happens instantly, without thought. The experience is felt, not reasoned. When there is resonance, the body relaxes, the breath deepens, the chest opens slightly. You may not even notice these changes consciously, but they are there. When there is non-resonance, the body tightens, the shoulders lift, the jaw clenches. There is a subtle withdrawal, even if you are smiling politely. These responses are not emotional judgments. They are physiological and energetic reactions to compatibility. From a scientific perspective, the heart's electromagnetic field interacts with the fields of others. This interaction influences the nervous system, affecting heart rate variability, breathing patterns, and emotional regulation. From an energetic perspective, coherence recognizes coherence. Incoherence registers as strain. From a conscious perspective, awareness integrates this information into felt sense. Biology, energy, and awareness converge in the same moment. This is why you can feel safe with someone who says very little and uneasy with someone who says all the right things. Language is slow. The heart is immediate. The heart does not evaluate character in moral terms. It evaluates relational fit. This does not mean that discomfort is always a signal to avoid. Sometimes discomfort arises because something is unfamiliar rather than unsafe. The difference lies in quality. Unfamiliarity often comes with curiosity and alertness. Incongruence comes with contraction and fatigue. The heart knows the difference. The same intelligence applies to places. Some environments feel nourishing. You may not be able to explain why a particular city, landscape, or room feels supportive, but your body responds as if it can rest there. Other places feel draining even if they are beautiful or impressive. The nervous system remains on guard. The heart does not settle. This is not imagination. It is coherent sensing context. The heart's field is constantly interacting with environmental fields. Noise, light, human density, emotional tone, and even architecture influence how the body feels. When these factors align with your inner state, energy flows. When they clash, effort increases. The mind may insist you should like a place. The heart responds to how it actually feels to be there. The same is true for paths in life. You may be presented with an opportunity that looks ideal. It pays well. It makes sense. Others approve. And yet, when you imagine yourself in it, something tightens. There is a sense of burden rather than expansion. Conversely, another path may feel uncertain, even risky, yet it brings a quiet sense of aliveness. The heart is not predicting outcomes. It is sensing alignment. This alignment has nothing to do with success or failure in conventional terms. It has everything to do with sustainability. A path that resonates with your heart supports your nervous system over time. A path that does not may lead to burnout, resentment, or disconnection, even if it looks impressive from the outside. When people ignore these signals repeatedly, they often find themselves exhausted without knowing why. They have made good choices that cost too much internally. The heart has been sending feedback the entire time, but it was dismissed in favor of logic alone. This is not because logic is wrong. It is because logic is incomplete. The heart does not operate on superstition or fantasy. It operates on integration. It reads layers of information, simultaneously physical cues, emotional tone, energetic coherence, and present moment awareness. What you experience as a feeling is the summary of this data. Calling it random or irrational is like calling a compass superstitious, because it does not explain magnetism in words. This understanding removes a great deal of confusion and self-blame. You stop questioning your sensitivity. You stop apologizing for needing environments that support your nervous system. You stop forcing yourself into situations that drain you simply because they are socially acceptable. You begin to trust your capacity to sense fit. This does not make you inflexible or closed. In fact, it makes you more adaptable because you are no longer constantly overriding yourself. When the heart feels safe, curiosity expands. You are more willing to explore, to learn, to engage. When the heart feels unsafe, everything becomes effortful. This is why connection feels effortless when it is right. Conversations flow. Silence is comfortable. There is no need to perform. There is mutual regulation, two systems, finding a shared rhythm. This is also why misalignment feels heavy. You may find yourself managing your expression, monitoring reactions, or recovering after interactions. These are signs of energetic mismatch, not personal failure. Understanding this allows for compassion rather than judgment. You no longer label people as good or bad based on how they feel to you. You simply recognize difference, compatibility, resonance. You allow others to be who they are, without forcing closeness where there is none. This maturity comes from trusting the heart's intelligence. It also brings clarity to decision-making. When faced with choices, you do not rush to answer. You imagine yourself living with each option and notice how your body responds. You give the heart time to register, without pressuring it to speak in words. Often, the answer arrives quietly. This approach is not reckless. It is responsible. It respects the full system rather than privileging one part of it. It acknowledges that life is lived through the body, not just thought about. When you live this way, you notice patterns. Certain people consistently energize you. Certain environments consistently drain you. Certain directions bring a sense of rightness even when they are challenging. Others feel heavy even when they are easy. These patterns are the heart's curriculum. They are not there to limit you. They are there to guide you toward coherence. When you follow them, life tends to unfold with less resistance. Not because everything is smooth, but because you are no longer moving against yourself. This is the quiet wisdom of resonance. It is not mystical. It is not random. It is the integration of biology, energy, and awareness in real time. The heart does not ask you to believe in anything. It asks you to pay attention, to notice what feels nourishing and what feels depleting, to honor the difference between fear-based avoidance and genuine misalignment, to trust that your body is participating in your life with more intelligence than you were taught to acknowledge. When you begin to live from this awareness, choices become simpler. You do not need to justify everything to yourself or others. You move where there is life. You pause where there is contraction. You adjust as information changes. The heart becomes a guide rather than a mystery. And as you continue to listen, you realize something quietly reassuring. You were never meant to navigate life by logic alone. You were meant to feel your way through it with intelligence. The heart has always been doing its part. You are simply learning how to listen. 9. A simple practice, bringing attention from the head down into the heart. Most people think transformation requires complexity, new techniques, detailed instructions, a system to master. But the heart does not respond to complexity. It responds to sincerity and presence. The more you try to manage it, the quieter it becomes. The more you simplify, the clearer it gets. This is why the most powerful practice is also the simplest one. You do not need a special posture. You do not need perfect silence. You do not need to understand what is supposed to happen. You only need to shift your attention. Most of us live almost entirely in the head. Thoughts racing, planning, remembering, worrying. evaluating, even when the body is still. The attention is not. The nervous system stays slightly elevated, always preparing, always anticipating. Over time, this becomes exhausting, but because it is familiar, we mistake it for normal. Bringing attention down into the heart interrupts this pattern gently, without force. You begin by slowing the breath, not controlling it aggressively, just allowing it to lengthen. Inhalations soften, exhalations take their time. As the breath slows, the body receives a signal that urgency is no longer required. Muscles begin to release without being told. The mind may still be active, but it loses some of its grip. Then you place a hand on your chest. This gesture may seem insignificant, but the body understands it immediately. Touch is grounding. It brings awareness out of abstraction and into sensation. The warmth of your hand, the subtle movement of breath beneath it, the gentle rise and fall of the chest. These sensations anchor you in the present moment more effectively than effort ever could. You are not trying to feel anything special. You are simply arriving. Once your attention has settled, you ask a simple question, not a complicated one, not something that requires analysis, something direct and honest. Like, what do I need right now? Or is this aligned for me? Or what feels true in this moment? And then you stop. This is the part most people find difficult, because the habit of thinking is strong. The mind wants to answer. It wants to explain, justify, predict. But this practice is not about thinking. It is about listening. You do not wait for words. The heart does not speak in sentences. It responds with sensation, a sense of openness or contraction, a feeling of ease or heaviness, a subtle warmth or a quiet resistance. These responses are often understated. If you are waiting for something dramatic, you may miss them entirely. The heart's answers are gentle because they are constant. When you ask and then fall silent, you are not doing nothing. You are creating space. Space for the body to register. Space for the nervous system to communicate. Space for awareness to notice what is already present. At first, this can feel unfamiliar. You may doubt whether anything is happening. You may wonder if you are doing it right. This doubt is simply the mind trying to reclaim control. You do not need to push it away. You let it pass. Just as you let the breath pass, the heart does not require certainty. It requires attention. Over time, you begin to recognize the language of sensation more clearly. You notice how a sense of rightness feels different from excitement, how misalignment feels different from fear, how calm clarity feels different from resignation. This discernment cannot be rushed. It develops naturally as you stop interrupting yourself. One of the most important aspects of this practice is releasing the expectation of immediate answers. The heart's intelligence does not operate on demand. It responds when it is ready. Often after you have stopped asking, insight may arrive later. While walking, showering, or resting, sometimes the answer is simply a shift in state rather than a conclusion. This is not inefficiency. It is integration. The heart integrates information across time, body, and awareness. It does not isolate variables. When you give it space, it organizes understanding in ways the mind alone cannot. This practice is not about making perfect decisions. It is about restoring communication. When you regularly bring attention from the head into the heart, the entire system recalibrates. The nervous system begins to associate stillness with safety. The body learns it does not need to stay braced. The mind learns it does not need to solve everything immediately. Gradually, something changes in how you move through the day. You pause more often. You react less automatically. You notice signals earlier. Instead of pushing through discomfort, you register it. Instead of overriding fatigue, you respect it. Instead of ignoring intuition, you give it room. These small shifts accumulate. Life becomes less about endurance and more about responsiveness. This is where healing quietly takes place. Many people approach healing as something they must actively do. In reality, healing is something that happens when resistance softens. When the heart is allowed to speak, the body adjusts. When the body adjusts, symptoms often ease. When symptoms ease, trust returns. You do not heal by forcing change. You heal by allowing coherence. This simple practice does not require belief. You do not have to convince yourself that the heart is intelligent. You only have to notice what happens when you listen. The results speak for themselves. Over time, you may notice that decisions feel less conflicted. You may still weigh options, but the internal argument quiets. There is a sense of this way that does not need defense. You may also notice that certain choices become clearly unsustainable, not because they are wrong, but because your body refuses to cooperate. This refusal is not sabotage. It is guidance. The heart's responses are not moral judgments. They are signals about coherence. When something supports your system, the heart opens. When something strains it, the heart contracts. You learn to read these signals not as commands, but as information. This makes you kinder to yourself. You stop calling yourself lazy when your body needs rest. You stop calling yourself confused when your heart needs time. You stop calling yourself weak when you choose softness over struggle. The practice itself remains simple. You breathe. You place a hand on your chest. You ask. You listen without expecting words. What changes is not the technique, but your relationship to it. What begins as an intentional pause becomes a way of living. You find yourself checking in naturally, without ceremony. You notice the heart's signals throughout the day, not just in formal moments. This integration is the goal. The heart does not want to be consulted only in crisis. It wants to be included in ordinary moments, in conversations, in decisions, in rest, in movement. When it is included, life feels less fragmented. You feel less split between what you think and what you feel. This practice also teaches patience. The heart unfolds understanding at its own pace. When you stop demanding immediate clarity, you receive deeper insight. When you stop forcing answers, you begin to trust the process of not knowing. Not knowing is not emptiness. It is openness. And openness is where new understanding enters. The mind often equates silence with absence. The heart knows silence as presence. When you sit in that presence, without trying to fill it, you reconnect with something steady beneath the noise of thought. This steadiness is not emotional numbness. It is grounded awareness. From this place, life feels more navigable, not because everything is clear, but because you are no longer lost in your own head. You are anchored in the body, guided by sensation, supported by rhythm. The heart answers every question you ask, just not in the way the mind expects. It answers through ease or tension, through expansion or contraction, through a sense of yes that feels quiet and a sense of no that feels firm without aggression. When you learn this language, you realize something important. You were never disconnected from guidance. You were only listening in the wrong place. This simple practice does not add anything to your life. It returns you to what was already there. And from that return, clarity emerges naturally, without effort, without force, without struggle. The heart has been waiting patiently. 10. You don't need to learn how to listen to your heart. You only need to remember. At some point along the way, many of us were convinced that listening to the heart was a skill we had lost, something we would need to relearn through effort, practice, or discipline. We imagined it as a distant ability, reserved for the intuitive, the spiritual, or the unusually sensitive. But this idea itself is part of the forgetting. You do not need to learn how to listen to your heart, because the heart was never silent to begin with. You only learned how not to listen. Children do this naturally. They do not analyze whether they feel safe. They feel it. They do not debate whether something feels right. They move toward what brings ease and away from what brings discomfort. When they are tired, they rest. When they are curious, they explore. When something feels wrong, they show it openly, without apology or explanation. They are not naive. They are attuned. The child's nervous system has not yet been trained to override sensation in favor of approval. The heart speaks, the body responds, and life flows in a simple, direct way. There is no inner argument about whether a feeling is justified. There is no need to translate experience into something acceptable before responding to it. Over time, this changes. We begin to receive messages subtle at first, then persistent. Don't trust that feeling. Be careful. Don't upset anyone. Don't make mistakes. Don't lose control. Slowly, the child learns that safety is not found in honesty, but in compliance. The heart's signals become inconvenient. They interfere with belonging. And so, we learn to turn the volume down. We stop responding to discomfort and start enduring it. We ignore the body's cues in order to meet expectations. We trade inner alignment for external acceptance. At first, this feels like maturity. Later, it feels like disconnection. Fear plays a central role in this forgetting. We fear being wrong. Not just practically wrong, but wrong in a way that costs us love or respect. We fear being misunderstood if we follow something that cannot be explained clearly. We fear losing control if we soften into uncertainty, and so we cling to the mind. Because the mind offers structure, prediction, and defense. The mind promises safety through control. The heart offers safety through coherence. When control becomes the priority, the heart's voice feels risky. It does not come with guarantees. It does not provide step-by-step instructions. It does not explain itself in advance. And in a world that rewards certainty and performance, this can feel dangerous. So we stop listening. But the heart does not stop speaking. It continues quietly, faithfully, through sensation, through fatigue, through restlessness, through relief, through a sense of rightness that arises when you finally tell the truth. Even if your voice shakes, through the heaviness that lingers when you agree to something that costs you internally. These signals never disappear. They are simply overshadowed. The mind grows louder. It learns to fill silence with commentary. It narrates every experience, interprets every feeling, explains away every intuitive nudge. Over time, it becomes difficult to distinguish the heart's quiet guidance from the noise of thought. This is not a failure. It is conditioning. Remembering how to listen to the heart does not require adding anything new. It requires subtracting interference. It requires creating enough inner quiet for the original signal to be felt again. This is why remembering feels different from learning. Learning adds layers. Remembering removes them. When you begin to soften your attention, when you stop demanding immediate answers, when you allow yourself to feel without rushing to explain, something familiar emerges. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, familiar. Like recognizing a voice you had not heard in a long time, only to realize it has been speaking to you all along. This remembering often brings grief. Grief for the times you ignored yourself. Grief for the years spent forcing paths that never felt right. Grief for the energy lost to constant self-correction. This grief is not a setback. It is a sign that the heart is becoming audible again. The heart does not blame you for forgetting. It understands why you did. It knows the world you were navigating. It knows the costs of vulnerability. It knows the fear of rejection and the need to belong. It does not demand repentance. It welcomes return. As you begin to remember, you may notice that listening to the heart does not always lead to comfort. Sometimes it asks you to rest when you want to push. Sometimes it asks you to say no when you want to please. Sometimes it asks you to leave what is familiar in order to remain aligned. But even when the heart asks for change, it does so without aggression. There is no pressure, no urgency, no threat. There is simply a steady sense of what is true. This steadiness is what makes the heart trustworthy. The mind reacts to fear. The heart responds to reality. When you trust the heart again, you do not become reckless. You become grounded. You begin to move at a pace that is sustainable. You stop abandoning yourself for approval. You stop negotiating your well-being in exchange for certainty. This does not make you inflexible. It makes you authentic. Authenticity does not mean always knowing what to do. It means being honest about what you feel, even when the path forward is unclear. It means allowing your inner experience to matter as much as external outcomes. This shift alone transforms how life feels. You stop trying to perform your worthiness. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop living as if you are constantly being evaluated. The heart does not evaluate. It attunes. It asks only one question, again and again. Does this bring coherence? Or does it create strain? When you begin to live by this question, decisions simplify. You may still face complexity, but you are no longer fragmented inside. You act from wholeness rather than conflict. The remembering deepens with practice, but the practice is not effortful. It is relational. You begin to check in with yourself the way you would with someone you care about, gently, without interrogation, without judgment. How does this feel? What is happening in my body right now? What is being asked of me? Honestly, these questions do not demand answers. They invite awareness, and awareness is enough. As the heart's voice becomes clearer, the mind gradually relaxes. It no longer needs to dominate. It can do what it does best: organize, articulate, plan without drowning out the deeper intelligence beneath it. The relationship between heart and mind becomes collaborative rather than adversarial. This is not a return to childhood. It is a return to integration. You carry wisdom now that you did not have then. You understand consequences. You recognize patterns. You can hold nuance. Remembering the heart does not erase maturity. It grounds it. A mature heart is not impulsive. It is precise. It does not chase pleasure or avoid discomfort blindly. It senses what supports life over time. It recognizes the difference between short-term relief and long-term coherence. This discernment comes not from thinking harder, but from listening more carefully. And listening does not mean obeying every feeling. It means honoring the information your inner world provides, rather than dismissing it outright. The heart has never stopped offering guidance. The mind simply learned to talk over it. When the mind quiets, even slightly, the heart's presence becomes unmistakable. It is not dramatic. It is steady. It does not rush you toward answers. It anchors you in what is real. This anchoring is what brings peace, not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of not being at war with yourself. The peace of moving through life with a sense of internal companionship. The peace of knowing that even when you are uncertain, you are not disconnected. You begin to trust that you will know what to do when the time comes. Because you are listening now, this trust changes everything. You stop demanding certainty from the future. You stop replaying the past in search of proof. You stay closer to the present, where the heart speaks most clearly. And in this presence, you remember something essential. You were never meant to live guided by thought alone. You were never meant to override your own knowing. You were never meant to become someone else in order to belong. The heart remembers who you are beneath adaptation and survival. It remembers your natural rhythm. It remembers your capacity for ease. It has been patient, not because it is weak, but because it knows you will return when you are ready. You do not need to become someone new to listen to your heart. You need to stop trying so hard to be someone else. When you remember this, listening becomes natural again, not as a technique, not as a practice, but as a way of living that feels quietly right. The heart has never been silent. The noise simply grew louder. Now, you are learning to listen again. When the heart softens, life no longer needs to push against you. There is a quiet relief that arrives when you finally stop treating life as something you must conquer. Not because you have given up, but because you have understood something essential. Life does not require constant resistance. It requires relationship, and the quality of that relationship is shaped, moment by moment, by the state of your heart. Throughout this journey, one truth has returned again and again, in different forms. The heart is not opposed to reason. It is not in conflict with intelligence. It is not a problem to be solved or a weakness to overcome. The heart does not fight the mind. It guides it. The mind is a remarkable instrument. It can analyze, calculate, plan, and execute with precision. It can steer through complexity and navigate difficult terrain. But a steering wheel alone cannot tell you where you are going. Without orientation, skillful movement can still lead you far off course. The heart provides that orientation. It does not tell the mind how fast to drive. It tells it which direction matters. It does not micromanage decisions. It sets the deeper context in which decisions make sense. When the heart is ignored, the mind works harder and harder, trying to compensate for the lack of inner guidance. When the heart is trusted, the mind relaxes into its proper role. This is not hierarchy. It is partnership. Many people spend their lives refining the steering wheel. Better strategies, better plans, better control, and yet they feel strangely lost. They are busy, capable, productive, and disconnected. They wonder why effort does not translate into fulfillment. The answer is often simple, though not easy to accept. They are driving without a compass. The heart is that compass. It does not shout directions. It does not insist. It points quietly, steadily, toward coherence, toward what aligns with your nervous system, your values, your capacity for life. When you follow it, the journey may still be challenging, but it feels meaningful. When you ignore it, even success can feel hollow. This is why softening matters so much. When the heart softens, it stops bracing against life. It stops anticipating harm where there is none. It stops gripping outcomes in fear. In that softening, perception changes. You begin to notice that many of the battles you were fighting were not required. They were responses to inner tension, not external necessity. As the heart softens, life seems to soften too, not because the world suddenly becomes gentle, but because you are no longer meeting it with armor. Conversations become less combative. Decisions become less exhausting. Challenges become less personal. You respond instead of react. You adapt instead of resist. Life does not need to be easier. It needs to be met differently. This shift does not happen through positive thinking or spiritual bypassing. It happens through honesty, through allowing yourself to feel what is present without immediately defending against it, through listening to the body's signals rather than overriding them, through trusting that clarity does not always arrive as certainty, but often as quiet alignment. When you trust the heart, you stop asking life to prove itself to you before you engage. You step into relationship with it. You move forward without demanding guarantees, guided by a sense of rightness that does not need explanation. This is not recklessness. It is maturity. A mature heart knows that control is limited, but responsiveness is infinite. It knows that safety does not come from predicting every outcome, but from trusting your capacity to meet whatever arises with presence and intelligence. When you live this way, struggle loses its grip. You may still work hard. You may still face loss. You may still encounter uncertainty, but the inner war ends. You are no longer divided against yourself. The mind and heart move together, informed by the same underlying coherence. This unity changes how effort feels. Effort no longer comes from fear. It comes from commitment. Action no longer feels like pressure. It feels like participation. You are not pushing life forward. You are moving with it. This is the difference between force and flow. Force exhausts. Flow sustains. The heart naturally inclines toward flow because it is attuned to rhythm. It understands timing in a way the mind cannot calculate. It knows when to advance and when to pause, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to hold on and when to let go. When you honor this timing, life begins to organize itself more intelligently around you. Not perfectly, not magically, but coherently. You notice that the right conversations happen when you are present enough to have them. That opportunities appear when you are not chasing them in panic. That solutions emerge when you stop insisting on immediate answers. This is not luck. It is alignment. Alignment does not eliminate difficulty. It reduces friction. It allows energy to be used for living rather than defending. It restores a sense of internal companionship that makes uncertainty tolerable and even creative. The final message here is gentle, but firm. You do not need to make life easier. You need to stop making it harder than it is. And much of that hardness comes from a heart that has learned to tighten in order to survive. When you thank that heart for protecting you, and then allow it to soften, something remarkable happens. Life no longer feels like an adversary. It feels like a conversation. The compass begins to work again. The mind steers. The heart orients. Without the heart, you can become very good at moving and still end up far from yourself. With the heart, even slow movement feels purposeful. This is what it means to live with coherence. Not certainty, not control. Coherence. When coherence is present, you do not need life to cooperate perfectly. You only need it to meet you honestly. And it does, again and again, in ways that are subtle but reliable. As you begin to trust the intelligence of the heart, you may notice that you are less interested in forcing outcomes and more interested in inhabiting moments. You are less driven by fear of getting it wrong and more guided by a sense of what feels true now. This presence is transformative. It does not remove complexity. It removes unnecessary struggle. And perhaps the most healing realization of all is this: you were never meant to harden yourself to live in this world. You were meant to soften enough to feel it. When the heart softens, life does not need to fight you for your attention. It no longer needs to shock you awake or push you to your limits. You are already listening. The mind, relieved of its burden to control everything, becomes clearer. The body, no longer braced for impact, becomes more responsive. The heart, trusted again, resumes its natural role as guide. This is not the end of the journey. It is a different way of walking it. And as you continue, one quiet truth will keep revealing itself in new ways. When you trust the wisdom of the heart, life does not need to become easier. It only needs to move in rhythm with you. And in that rhythm, you discover something simple and profound. You were never lost. You were only listening in the wrong direction. Now, the compass is back in your hands.